So today I will tell you the story of Ottoman Jewish midwives in the late Ottoman Empire. And we'll be learning why they were called as bloodstained midwives and what made them bloody in fact. And what can this story tell us about the broader Jewish women's experience with Ottoman modernity? So in 1492, when Sephardim took refuge from Spain in the Ottoman Empire, they brought with them their masteries in various fields, including medicine. And Jewish contribution to medicine in Anatolia has a long tradition, in fact, even before Sephardic settlements. The Romaniots, the Greek-speaking Jews, were employed in the Seljuk court in 14th century, in fact. And Jewish physicians continued to work in the palace throughout the Ottoman history too. You can see some of the most famous court physicians' name in the slide. There were even dynasties of Jewish physicians in the court. So we can say that Jewish male physicians were enjoying a professional distinction and recognition in the medical field. But I was wondering, what about women? So it is mentioned to Jewish women in a travelogue from the 16th century. According to Stephen Gerlach, a German theologian, alongside Jewish male physicians, in fact, Jewish women too have played a semi-doctor role in the palace, and they have given many medical and also magical treatments to sultanas. The author also mentions a rumor about a Jewish court midwife. A rumor has it that the empress, it was Hürrem Sultan in that time, once hoped to give a birth to a boy. And when she gave birth to a girl, her midwife, who was a Jewess, replaced the girl with a Jewish boy to save her being disappointed. So you can see there's an image of Jewish midwife in this rumor who has a highly critical role in the middle of intimacy. And also it is attributed to her being capable to change even the dynasty just because of her extreme loyalty to her sultana. As a PhD student studying the late Ottoman history, I re-encountered the image of Jewish midwife when I was researching on modernization in the legal field initially. This is a political story, in fact, the story of Jewish midwives, and the story happens in the context of politics of reproduction. So this politics of reproduction can be summarized as Ottoman pronatalism, in fact. That's to say, promoting to increase birth rate. And also it was in the periods in which education was going through a big change. So all of these modernization attempts have an impact on midwives. First of all, in the 19th century, vital demographic changes were occurring within the empire. There were nationalist liberation movements, long and multiple wars, and of course, major land and population losses. You can see them in the map. So as a consequence of these losses, population became something important for the state, something crucial to intervene for the state. And it means that productive capacity of women also gained a broader political and social meaning for the state. In a detailed order written in 1838, this new pronatalist approach to women productivity exposed itself very well. I extracted some expressions from the decree for you here. So it says the welfare of a country dependent on the number of its inhabitants, and also protecting progeny as a religious duty, is a religious duty for human being. It says farz ayn, it is the same thing with a religious duty. And also in this context, the act of abortion means the killing of a soul. It's equal to killing a man. Thus, Mahmud II, it is the Sultan of this time, declared that it would be banned as a requirement of his general policy of mercy and compassion. So you can see how women's productivity became a topic in the state agenda. It was during the reign of Mahmud II, as I said, and I wanted to show you Mahmud II. Yeah, you can be sure that these are the same guy. It is after the clothing reform happened. So I wanted to show it because it really expressed there is a change. There's a change in this time. One may wonder, wasn't it the situation always? Wasn't it the same old story, the state intervention to women's body, etc.? So as I said, there's a change, and the answer is surprisingly no. Let's remember what was the legal approach to the issue in the Ottoman Empire. So the issue of abortion in Ottoman law was, according to the Ottoman law, it was even if it is within the first 4 months, as long as it is within the first 4 months, abortion does not constitute a criminal act, in fact, though it is still reprehensible action. It is described as a reprehensible action. It's mekruh in Arabic, so which doesn't require any punishment by a judge, but still a discouraged one, a religiously discouraged one. So when we look at the fatwa collections, the collections of legal opinions issued by expert Muslim judges, Muslim jurists, we see that even the latest fatwas explicitly say that if the abortion was practiced by the common consent of husband and wife, it will not constitute a crime punishable by the judge. But yeah, it is a personal sin and it is religiously discouraged. You can see an extract of this fatwa in the slide. So actually, be either birth or abortion or anything else, decision regarding childbirth, decision regarding reproduction, it was recognized by the law as a part of an unviolable private sphere. It wasn't, I mean, honestly, the state doesn't care about if you have a baby or not, etc. But it was a situation until the 19th century. So by the 19th century, the ruling elite started to be anxious about demography, the reasons that I mentioned before. So that's why the practice of abortion became a criminal act. It wasn't always criminal, but it is criminalized. And midwives were the first ones to blame as the main reason, as the main actor who make it happen, who helped this act. One of the most compelling examples of this targeting midwifery in the Ottoman Empire occurred in 1827. An order from Imperial Chancellor of State sent to the chief physician of the Imperial Court. And it pointed that, by the way, you see now the actual copy of the edict are found in the archives. So it says that it has been investigated that midwives from Muslim, Jewish, and Christian populations in the capital have been involved in giving abortifacient medications and have led to baby miscarriage and have caused the death of some women too. Thus, it is declared that midwives from all four major religious communities. It is called millet in Turkish. That is to say Muslim, Greek, Armenian, and Jewish should not give any abortifacient medicine to pregnant women. And furthermore, it is announced that punishment of anyone who contradicted the order was now legally acceptable because the protection of women is a compulsory requirement for the state. So basically, it's, I think, obvious that the state was anxious about its demographic structure. But also this decree was particularly important one for our subject matter, because it is in this decree that we came across the story of two Jewish midwives from Istanbul in that time. So the story of two Jewish midwives for this story, the document says that on the grounds that Ilya Maxi, one from the Jewish ladies who known to public with the name Bloodstand midwife, it's in Turkish Kanlı Ebe, and her assistant named Rahil Polisa have been rumored to be involved in this unpleasant act. It means abortion. And since it is obvious that they cannot be hindered and prevented by solely being warned or admonished, they were exiled and buried in Thessaloniki as a deterrent to others. So this pejorative nickname of kanlı or bloodstands was a term to define abortionist midwives who practice abortion, and directly reflects how prenatalism caused targeting midwives. All the Jewish midwives were not as visible and famous as Jewish male physicians. In fact, they were two esteemed ones in their fields. They were known as the foremost skilled ones in the art of midwifery. For example, Abdulaziz Bey, an Ottoman folklorist in that time, who wrote about history of everyday life in the empire, wrote that until the 19th century, reforms of medical education led by the state, Ottoman Jews were predominant in the field of both medicine and midwifery. And he adds, especially Jewish midwives played a pivotal role in Ottoman folk medicine. So, in order to have a pivotal role in folk medicine, in fact, you need to be recognized in the society. You need to be known. You need to be trusted and accepted. And this trust can only be constructed in this specific field through proficiency. So I argue that it is this reputation and proficiency of Jewish midwives is their stigmatization. Their fame, in fact, turned into their stigma within the specific context. And it is this new interventionist approach to reproduction which impacted the way in which the state viewed Jewish midwives. So they went from being the harbingers of medical knowledge, the harbingers of folk medicine, and became the blood midwives. Also, I think this is why their exile was qualified as a deterrent one, because punishing the eminent and famous members of a profession would be more persuasive than punishing regular one. So in this targeting, there's traditional midwives. Sorry, I forgot to show you the Thessalonican ladies, if you wanted to imagine who were they as midwives and who were they as women, etc. So yeah, in this targeting there's traditional midwives, there is embedded another component of Ottoman modernization. It was not only about modernization in the legal field, but also modernization of medical education and the process of medicalization of childbirth. I mean the shift our understanding, by medicalization, I mean the shift our understanding of birth from a natural process to a medical one. The transition away from the traditions of lay midwives and social childbirth in home, towards modern university-trained obstetrician and childbirth in hospitals. So until the mid-19th century, as it was around the world, experience was the teacher of midwives. And you can see a traditional midwife ascend in childbirth in the mention. So both in Muslim and Jewish communities, the image of midwife was a character of old woman who is elderly enough to have an extensive experience. For instance, the Sephardi midwives were called bolisot, denoting that old women who have practical medical knowledge. But throughout the modernization process in medical education, Ottoman traditional midwives exposed to another scapegoating because of progressivist political elites charged them as the main reason of infant and maternal mortality in the empire. So they were the scapegoat for the abortion, for the act of abortion, and also for the infant mortality, even for the natural one. So according to Besim Ömer, he is the founding father of the modern obstetrics and gynecology in the empire. It is why the art of midwifery, the science of midwifery, couldn't progress. It's only because of this domination of these old crones. You can see his verse about the issue. So I just wanted to show you these old crones. Here it is, you can see, in the way to childbirth. So in order to prevent maternal and infant mortality, which they believed caused by traditional midwives, the state elite tried to educate and license as traditional midwives. And in 1842, a midwifery courses opened within the School of Medicine. And at the end of the course, a license would be given to the attendant. You can see this is the School of Medicine. But most importantly, when you get this license, when you be a licensed midwife, practicing midwifery without it would be banished. The sources indicate that at the end of the year 1845, only, in fact, 36 midwives received diplomas, received license, and none of these women were from Jewish millet. 20 of them were Muslim, and 16 of them were Christian millet. And viewed together with their expertise in midwifery, it is interesting that Jewish women absence from the courses. And the literature, the Ottoman historians think that this situation in accordance with their reputation of assessing abortion because of their already abortionist midwives, not be licensed, etc. But there's a puzzling detail found in Besim Ömer's, as I said, the founding father of modern gynecology in the empire. So Besim Ömer's observation on these midwifery courses, while he describing the chaotic condition of the courses given in the School of Medicine, he states that elderly women from various millets, most of whom could not read and write in Turkish, gathered twice a week, and the teacher was teaching them in Turkish, Spanish, Armenian, and Greek within an hour. So if you're familiar with Ottoman history, you can be sure that it's almost a certainty that what Besim Ömer means with Spanish was actually Ladino, the vernacular language of Sephardi Jews living in the Ottoman Empire, because he was mentioning this language in accordance with 4 millets, Jews, Muslim, Greeks, and Armenians. So if there are no Jewish students, why would the teacher give the lesson in Spanish, actually in Ladino? So in the light of this information, it is possible to argue that Jewish midwives actually attended the courses, but avoided graduating and becoming licensed midwives. But why? Why did they stand aloof from gaining a license despite pursuing classes? Indeed, when we take consideration the overall scarcity of attendance to the courses, see, I mean, in 3 years, there were only 36 attendants. So it is obvious that most of the Ottoman midwives were remained aloof from being licensed. It can be a resistance to, I was thinking that it can be a resistance to protect their professional autonomy, because when you became a licensed midwives, it is prohibited to use obstetric instruments on your own. You have to work under the control of a male obstetrician because the university education wasn't open for female students. So you have to work under the control of a male obstetrician, and yeah, basically you lost your autonomy, your professional autonomy. But this resistance was expensive, because this resistance was at the expense of being deprived of opportunities accompanied by being a licensed midwife, such as salary and retirement. So if you think on reverse, the midwife, actually we can conclude that the midwives who were after license were the ones who needed license, who needed the state's auspices indeed. So in this case, it is also possible to conclude that as the most knowledgeable and proficient ones who has a pivotal role in the Ottoman folk medicine, Jewish midwives didn't need the state's approval because they have sufficient reputation and enough clientele to keep their autonomy. In fact, the rarity of Jewish midwives who have a diploma was a case even in early 20th century. So Marie-Christine Warhol mentioned this issue, this rarity of having a diploma in her topographical work called Balat Faubourg Istanbul, Balat, the Jewish Ghetto of Istanbul. In fact, it is a fascinating book. It's an urban portrait of Balat, one of the most important Jewish quarters in Istanbul, Jewish neighborhoods. And the author reveals that in this book, reveals the Sephardic heritage in the city. She actually reconstructs Jewish memoir of the neighborhood based on her fieldwork and interviews conducted in 3 different countries. So here, in one of these memories, I came across the traces of a midwife from Balat. And it's emphasizing the rarity of having a diploma even in 1921. So it says all the houses around the synagogue belonged to Jewish families. In one of them, next to the school, was living Mademoiselle Mazaltucha La Comadre, a renowned midwife of Castoria. it is the name of neighborhood, one of the few midwives who had a diploma in the Ottoman Empire in her time. She started to practice in 1921 in Kuzguncuk at a dead-end street called İzrail Çıkmazı, which denotes in its name its all Jewish residents. So if you want to, so it is the door that that the Matmazel Mazal Tuğçe was living near. It is the door of the Kasturia synagogue. And those are the actual photos of neighborhoods, Balat and Kuzguncuk. So all in all, in this research, I was trying to reveal what was the Jewish woman's experience, Jewish woman's daily experience, in fact, in the empire. And I think I saw a kind of historical agency in these sources, because Jewish midwives' experience was in fact shaped by their social and political embeddedness, shaped by all these things, all this political context. And they were deeply integrated in their sociopolitical environment, but also they weren't only subjected to something, but they were also subjects, because they have a certain degree of agency with their professional identities, with their kind of political resistance to patriarchal redefinition of midwifery. So I think they were also one of the lucky ones who were being able to insist, in fact, on having their professional autonomy. So all in all, they were in the middle of life. They were resisting. They were insisting on keeping their professional autonomy in an age where midwifery redefined accordance with rising patriarchy. So thank you for your attention.